The collapse isn't loud, it isn't chaotic, it isn't the kind of disaster you notice all at once. It's quieter than that. It's the dimming of fluorescent lights, the emptying of shelves, the temporary closed signs that never come down. It's the slow surgical disappearance of retail giants that once felt immortal. For years, America lived under the illusion that retail was recovering, that online sales and strategic restructuring were signs of adaptation, not warning flares. But now, as the nation limps deeper into inflation, debt, and shrinking consumer power, the truth is finally bursting through. The retail sector isn't evolving, it's collapsing, and 2026 is shaping up to be the breaking point. 10 major retail chains, the kind that anchor malls, neighborhoods, and entire communities, have begun closing stores quietly, methodically, with as little publicity as possible. Not because they're reorganizing, because they're running out of lifelines. This is the hidden collapse, and these are the chains falling first. 1. Costco, the wholesale giant that finally hit a wall. Costco was supposed to be untouchable, the holy grail of American retail, a fortress built on memberships, loyalty, bulk savings, and a cult-like customer base that treated their warehouse card like a passport to a parallel universe where inflation didn't exist. But in 2026, even Costco is cracking. The closures came quietly, no dramatic press conference, no panic-inducing headlines, just a short corporate statement buried beneath stock updates. A small number of underperforming warehouses will be closed as part of ongoing optimization. Translated, Costco hit the wall it never believed it would reach, because the truth hiding behind those closures is brutally simple. Bulk spending collapses when America's savings collapse. And that's exactly what happened. 1. The membership model is breaking. Costco's entire empire rests on a single pillar, millions of Americans paying an annual fee for the privilege of buying in bulk, but that pillar is starting to crack. Membership renewals, once the most stable number in retail, are slipping. Not dramatically, not enough to scare Wall Street, but enough to scare Costco. Why? Because renewals don't fall when people lose interest. They fall when people lose margin. The customers abandoning Costco aren't disappointed, they're broke. Households that once stocked up on pallets of paper towels now buy a single roll. Families that once bought 20 pounds of meat now buy 2. People who once spent $400 per trip now spend $70 and feel the pain anyway. Costco's model was built on abundance. America now lives in scarcity. I'll say enorm. 2. Bulk buying makes no sense in an inflation economy. For decades, buying in bulk meant saving money. The math was simple. Pay more now, save more over time. But that math collapses when credit cards are maxed, interest rates exceed 25%, groceries inflate faster than paychecks, consumers have no cash cushion. Bulk purchases require one thing: upfront money. America doesn't have that anymore. Even Costco loyalists are quietly switching to smaller, cheaper, immediate purchases. The warehouse economy is incompatible with the paycheck-to-paycheck economy. 3. Costco's hidden weakness, the middle-class decline. Costco isn't for the wealthy, it never was. It's for the stable middle-class household, the family with a minivan, a home with storage space, and enough income to justify buying 40 pounds of chicken at once. That customer base is evaporating. The closures are concentrated in regions where the middle class has deteriorated fastest: the Midwest, the Southwest, parts of Florida, the Pacific Northwest. These areas are becoming economic dead zones, and Costco refuses to operate in dead zones. 4. The biggest warning: shrinking foot traffic. Costco's executives study one metric more obsessively than all others: basket size. And basket sizes have shrunk for 9 straight quarters. Not just the number of items, the type of items. The internal reports paint a grim picture. Fewer electronics, fewer appliances, fewer furniture purchases, fewer premium brands, more basic staples, more 150 food court meals replacing full shopping trips. Costco's food court, once a quirky novelty and is becoming a survival tool. When people come for lunch instead of groceries, the model breaks. 5. The final stress, shrink and theft. Even Costco, with its receipt checks, membership controls, and controlled entry, is not immune to organized retail theft. Inventory shrink is rising fast. High-value items are being targeted. Security budgets are ballooning. Costco's ironclad fortress is developing cracks. And for a chain built on thin margins, cracks become craters quickly. 6. The truth behind the closures. Costco is not closing stores because they're failing. It's closing stores because America is failing. Failing to support the kind of discretionary spending, stability, and financial cushion Costco's model depends on. This isn't a business correction, it's a macroeconomic symptom, a sign that the consumer base capable of supporting bulk retail is shrinking, quietly, steadily, and permanently. Costco was the last retailer expected to falter, but when the most resilient giant begins to retreat, the collapse is no longer coming. It's here. 2. CVS. The next wave of pharmacy deserts hits hard. CVS was supposed to be the stable one, the chain too big, too essential, too embedded in American life to ever face collapse. Pharmacies don't go out of business, we were told. People will always need medication. People will always need refills, flu shots, walk-in clinics. But in 2026, even CVS is bleeding out, and the closures now sweeping across the country are not belt-tightening. They are abandonments. Whole regions being quietly cut off from basic medical access, because the truth behind CVS's shutdowns is far uglier than the corporate statements suggest. This isn't retail contraction, this is a healthcare failure. 1. The insurance reimbursement collapse. Here's the crisis CVS will never say publicly. Pharmacies are losing money on most of the prescriptions they fill. Insurance companies, especially pharmacy benefit managers, have slashed reimbursement rates so aggressively that CVS often pays more to dispense a drug than the insurance company reimburses. Imagine spending $100 to deliver a medication and being reimbursed $78. Multiply that by millions of prescriptions. Multiply that by thousands of stores. CVS wasn't being squeezed. It was being financially suffocated. The industry's internal term for this is chilling. Negative fill margins. A business cannot survive negative margins on its primary service, so entire stores must die. 2. Rising theft. Turning pharmacies into war zones. Pharmacies have become prime targets for organized retail crime. Razor blades, OTC medication, insulin, baby formula, makeup, hygiene products, supplements. All small, all high resale value, all expensive to replace. CVS stores in major cities now lose thousands per day and in stolen goods. Loss prevention budgets tripled, insurance premiums doubled. Security contractors became mandatory, still not enough. Some stores are so heavily targeted that CVS labels them internally as unsustainable retail environments. That's corporate language for, we can't keep anything on the shelves, so they close. 3. Staffing collapse, the pharmacist exodus. Here's the quiet disaster no headline covers. Pharmacists, the backbone of the entire business, are quitting. Not switching stores, not reducing hours, quitting the industry. CVS pharmacists now describe working conditions like this: 500 plus prescriptions per day, non-stop calls with insurance companies, vaccine quotas, chronic understaffing, corporate monitoring of speed metrics, burnout rates above 70%, violent encounters with customers. In many regions, CVS can't hire replacements. Some stores operate with no pharmacist for days. A pharmacy without a pharmacist is a liability, a lawsuit waiting to happen, a shutdown waiting to be announced. 4. The birth of pharmacy deserts. CVS closures aren't evenly distributed, they cluster. Urban neighborhoods, rural counties, low-income suburbs, the exact communities already abandoned by Walgreens, independent pharmacies, grocery store pharmacies. These closures create pharmacy deserts, regions where residents must travel 10, 20, even 45 minutes for medications. Older Americans now go without refills. Chronic conditions worsen. Emergency rooms fill with preventable cases, lives shorten quietly. This is no longer retail loss. It's a public health emergency disguised as store optimization. 5. The profit illusion has broken. For years, CVS hid behind the illusion of stability. Minute clinics, health hubs, massive retail footprints, corporate partnerships, a dominant share of US prescriptions. But all those advantages evaporate when the core customer, the everyday American patient, no longer has money to spend. When inflation guts discretionary income, customers stop buying. Cosmetics, snacks, supplements, beauty products, seasonal items, household goods. All the things CVS relies on to compensate for losing money on medications. CVS didn't collapse because healthcare demand fell. It collapsed because poverty rose. 6. The closures are a warning. CVS is not shrinking because it's weak. It's shrinking because the American consumer health system is collapsing under soaring healthcare costs, collapsing insurance payouts, rising crime, labor shortages, inflation, shrinking disposable income. These closures aren't random, they're structural, a sign that the healthcare retail hybrid model, the one millions depend on, is no longer financially viable. CVS was supposed to be permanent. Now it's another retail giant quietly pulling out of communities too poor to sustain it. And if CVS can fall, the rest of America's pharmacy network is already on borrowed time. 3. Kohl's, the last mid-tier department store, finally breaks. Kohl's was the last survivor of a dying species. The mid-tier department store, not luxury, not discount, just middle America. For decades, it occupied the shrinking space between Macy's and Walmart, a space built for families who weren't wealthy, weren't poor, but were stable enough to shop for clothes without calculating every dollar in their bank account. But that customer doesn't exist anymore, and Kohl's, the final chain built entirely around that disappearing demographic, is now quietly collapsing. The closures rolling out in 2026 aren't a correction, they're an obituary, because Kohl's isn't being beaten by competitors. It's being beaten by the economic extinction of the American middle class. 1. The vanishing customer base. Kohl's shoppers were once the backbone of suburban America. Two-income households, mortgage owners, modest but predictable spenders, price-conscious but not desperate. That household has been replaced by something far more fragile. Families drowning in debt, renters priced out of home ownership, parents skipping basic purchases to cover groceries, workers juggling multiple jobs, consumers relying on credit to survive. In Kohl's internal reports, one phrase appears repeatedly: shrinking discretionary wallet, meaning people aren't shopping less, they simply can't shop at all. 2. The mid-tier trap. Kohl's got stuck in a deadly no man's land. Too expensive to compete with Walmart and Target, too low-end to compete with Nordstrom or Dillard's, too unfashionable for younger shoppers, too dependent on coupons for profit. It wasn't that Kohl's did anything wrong, it's that mid-tier retail itself is no longer viable. The American economy hollowed out the middle, department stores built around that middle are being hollowed out with it. 3. The loyalty market collapsed. For years, Kohl's relied on gimmicks. Kohl's Cash, endless coupons, rotating sales, member perks. These programs masked a growing problem. Consumers were only buying when prices were slashed to the bone. Margins evaporated, profits shrank, discount culture became dependency. Kohl's trained customers to never pay full price, and eventually to stop paying even discounted prices. Notice your word. 4. Inventory, the silent disaster. Look behind the clean aisles and you'll find the rot. Mountains of unsold stock, warehouses overflowing, supply contracts too expensive to break, freight costs almost double pre-2020, rising theft targeting apparel and cosmetics. The economics are brutal. When customers stop buying clothing and shrink keeps rising, a department store becomes a landfill with lighting. Kohl's is drowning in inventory it can't sell and can't afford to lose. 5. Mall death, suburban death, foot traffic. Let's look at while Macy's died inside malls, Kohl's is dying outside them, in the strip centers and suburban plazas that once felt untouchable. The reasons form a perfect storm: suburban flight, rising vacancies, shrinking household budgets, fewer errands, fewer trips, inflation killing impulse shopping. Foot traffic isn't down, it's disintegrated. Stores that once saw steady daily crowds now feel like abandoned museums of a forgotten economic era. 6. The online defeat. Kohl's tried to pivot online, tried to modernize, tried to compete with Amazon, Shein, Temu, and fast fashion giants. But Kohl's has two fatal disadvantages: high overhead, low margin items. You cannot win an online race selling clothing at 30% margins with rent, staffing, lighting, and theft. The math simply doesn't work. Online killed fashion retail, inflation killed mid-tier retail. Kohl's is caught in the crossfire of both. 7. The quiet closure strategy. Kohl's isn't announcing massive closures all at once, it's doing something more strategic. Cutting stores quietly, one region at a time. Hoping the public won't connect the dots, but the pattern is clear. Midwest, central states, southern suburbs, rural adjacent shopping corridors, all the regions where the middle class has eroded fastest. Kohl's isn't abandoning locations, it's abandoning demographics. 8. The final truth. Kohl's isn't collapsing because it failed as a company, it's collapsing because America failed the economic group that Kohl's depended on. When the middle class shrinks, retailers built to serve them shrink too, until there's nothing left to shrink. Kohl's is now the latest casualty of a retail landscape where luxury survives, discount survives, and the middle dies quietly, store by store. This isn't retail evolution, it's a structural implosion, and Kohl's is only the third warning. 4. JCPenney, the zombie retailer that can't die, but can't live either. JCPenney has become something America has never seen before, a retail chain that is both dead and alive, a corporate zombie wandering through the ruins of the mall era, too hollow to recover, too large to bury, too embedded in American memory to fully disappear. The closures happening in 2026 aren't surprising. What is surprising is that JCPenney lasted this long at all, because Penney's isn't fighting competitors anymore, it's fighting time, it's fighting gravity. Well, it's fighting the collapse of the very world that created it. 1. The 2020 rescue wasn't a rescue, it was a delay. When JCPenney filed for bankruptcy in 2020, two massive mall landlords bought it to keep themselves alive, not because Penney's was profitable, not because it had potential, but because without JCPenney, hundreds of malls would instantly collapse. Penney's became a structural support beam, not for itself, but for dying malls clinging to relevance. The result? A company that technically survived, but only as a hostage of the retail ecosystem around it. JCPenney wasn't rescued, it was repurposed. A zombie anchor keeping abandoned malls from collapsing under their own weight. 2. The mall collapse. finally surpassed the retail collapse. For years, JCPenney was able to limp along because malls still had pulses. Weak, shaky, inconsistent pulses, but pulses nonetheless. Not anymore. 2024 to 2026 marked a tipping point. Mall walkouts, runaway vacancies, abandoned anchors, shuttered food courts, crime increases, plunging foot traffic, declining teen shoppers, rising commercial foreclosures. Malls didn't lose relevance, they lost oxygen. And because Penney's stores were welded to mall ecosystems, the chain is being dragged down with them. A JCPenney inside a dying mall isn't a store, it's a tomb. 3. The aging customer base. Penney's shopper demographic is a time capsule. Older, price-conscious, traditional, loyal out of habit, not enthusiasm. This demographic is shrinking, literally. Younger shoppers aren't replacing them. They don't want Penney's fashion. They don't browse Penney's racks. They don't set foot in malls. To Gen Z, Penney's is a museum exhibit. To millennials, it's nostalgia and nothing more. To boomers, the core base. It's a place they visit less frequently as fixed incomes tighten and mobility declines. A retailer cannot survive solely on customers who are aging out of consumption. 4. Inventory and identity collapse. JCPenney doesn't know who it is anymore. Not fashionable, not luxury, not affordable enough, not efficient enough, not discount, not premium, not relevant. It's a brand without a lane, without a purpose, without a target. No. And the inventory reflects that identity crisis. Outdated styles, inconsistent sizing, supply chain leftovers, declining brand partnerships, clearance racks everywhere. Penney's is a department store without departments that matter. 5. The financials reveal the zombie reality. JCPenney's store closures are quiet, small batches scattered across states, a strategy designed to avoid viral headlines. But the internal financials tell a different story. Foot traffic down 38% since 2019. Apparel sales down double digits. Home goods collapse after pandemic. Spike. E-commerce too weak to survive alone. Debt obligations rising. Lease renegotiations failing. Anchor store vacancies accelerating. Each closure is less a business decision and more a survival tactic. Cutting off necrotic limbs to delay total organ failure. 6. The collapse. No one wants to admit credit-based losses. Penney's credit card program, once its lifeline, has turned toxic. As credit card delinquencies surge nationwide, JCPenney card defaults are skyrocketing. Rewards liabilities are rising. Consumer credit risk is at multi-decade highs. The chain once made more money on financing than on clothing. That lifeline is now a boat anchor. 7. Why JCPenney can't fully die. If JCPenney collapses completely, hundreds of malls go dark, thousands of leases break, billions in commercial loans fail, entire retail corridors implode, dozens of towns lose their last department store. So Penney's is kept alive artificially, not by strength but by dependency. It's too bankrupt to thrive but too important to liquidate. A zombie, a relic, a placeholder for a retail world that already ended. 8. The 2026 closures mean one thing. JCPenney's slow shutdown is a symbolic moment, the confirmation that the middle-class retail ecosystem has finally run out of road. Because if even the zombie survivor, the chain that lived through bankruptcy, mall collapse, department store extinction, and cultural irrelevance, is now being quietly dismantled, then the hidden collapse is no longer hidden. It's here, it's accelerating, and Penney's is simply the next domino. 5. Home Depot, the renovation collapse. No executive predicted. Home Depot was never supposed to flinch. This was the chain that thrived during recessions, booms, crashes, and pandemics. The place where America bought its way out of financial fear through renovation, repair, and reinvention. If Walmart is the thermometer of the working class, Home Depot has always been the pulse of the housing market. But in 2026, that pulse is weakening. The chain's newest closures are small in number, quiet in messaging, and carefully buried under corporate jargon, exactly the way a giant tries to hide the first signs of structural failure. Because Home Depot isn't shutting stores due to competition. It's shutting stores because the American housing engine, the economic force powering 40 years of retail, labor, and construction, has seized up. And without that engine, Home Depot can't survive at full size. 1. The housing market froze, then shattered. Home Depot's lifeblood is simple: new home sales, home renovations, DIY upgrades, contractor demand. When people move, they buy. When people refinance, they renovate. When people feel secure, they improve. But in 2026, none of those things are happening. Mortgage rates hit generational highs. Home prices remain unreachable. Refinancing is dead. First-time buyers have all but vanished. Existing homeowners are locked into their old rates. Sales volume is at its lowest since the Great Recession. No moves, no remodels, no upgrades. The American housing ecosystem is frozen in place like a crashed computer, and Home Depot is the program that can no longer run. 2. The contractor slowdown became a freefall. Home Depot's strongest customers aren't DIY weekend warriors, they're contractors, the pros who buy thousands in lumber, tools, flooring, and appliances. But contractors are reporting canceled projects, delayed renovations, clients backing out, financing rejected, budget slashed, material costs too high, demand collapsing. When contractors stop buying, Home Depot's deepest revenue channel collapses, and that's exactly what's happening. Entire departments, from windows to cabinets to major appliances, are down double digits. Some regions report recession-level demand, despite the government insisting the economy is stable. Home Depot's internal forecast doesn't talk about slowdowns. It talks about a multi-year contraction. 3. The DIY boom was a mirage, and it's gone. During the pandemic, DIY spending exploded. People repainted rooms, built decks, replaced floors, upgraded kitchens. But that spike wasn't real demand, it was trapped at home and bored demand. And once life returned to normal, the DIY wave collapsed. Except 2026 isn't normal, it's far worse. With inflation eating savings and credit card APRs above 25%, DIY is dead. Households are no longer improving anything. They're patching, fixing, delaying, living with broken things because replacing them is no longer financially possible. The DIY customer didn't disappear, they went broke. 4. The secret crisis: big ticket purchases are dying. Home Depot's profits come from big items: appliances, cabinets, HVAC systems, water heaters, flooring, countertops, lighting, tools, but big ticket spending is in free fall. A family choosing between groceries and rent doesn't replace their refrigerator. A homeowner staring at rising insurance costs doesn't remodel their kitchen. A retiree drowning in property taxes doesn't buy new flooring. Home Depot sells the things inflation kills first. And inflation isn't just killing demand, it's killing the financial logic behind home improvement itself. 5. Organized theft hits the supply chain. It's not just consumer weakness. Home Depot has become a lucrative target for professional theft rings. Why? Because power tools, copper wiring, outdoor equipment, faucets, and generators are small, valuable, easy to resell, easy to hide, impossible to track. Some Home Depot locations lose more to theft in a single month than they net in profit for an entire quarter. Insurance premiums rise. Shrink rates spike. Margins evaporate. Eventually, the math makes the decision. A store that cannot secure its inventory cannot remain open. 6. The Home Depot retreat means something bigger. Home Depot is not a fragile retailer, it is a barometer, and that's why the closures matter. When Home Depot closes stores, it means the housing market is failing, consumer savings are gone, borrowing power is dead, renovation demand has collapsed, contractors are idle, big ticket spending has flatlined, and most importantly, Americans are no longer investing in their homes because they can no longer afford to. This isn't a business adjustment, it's a macroeconomic warning, the kind that only appears when a nation's foundational wealth system is breaking down from the inside. Home Depot survived every crisis of the last 40 years, but it is now facing the one crisis no retailer can survive: a country too broke to improve anything. 6. Starbucks, a coffee empire shrinking under urban chaos. Starbucks was never supposed to contract. It was the chain that survived recessions, pandemics, supply shocks, labor revolts. The place people visited not just for caffeine, but for normalcy. A corporate ritual, a $6 reminder that life was still manageable. But in 2026, even Starbucks is breaking. The company isn't calling it a retreat, they're calling it portfolio realignment, operational optimization, store transformation, corporate euphemisms hiding a simple, brutal truth. Starbucks is closing stores because the American city is becoming unprofitable. The closures are not random, not scattered, not gentle. They are targeted, an evacuation map of the urban collapse no one in government wants to acknowledge. 1. When a latte becomes a luxury, the model dies. Starbucks built an empire on the idea that people would always find $5 for a drink. That assumption held for decades, but now they won't, they can't. The company's internal data shows what consumers won't say out loud. Customers switching to small instead of grande, daily regulars becoming weekly visitors, drip coffee replacing specialty drinks, fewer food add-ons, vanishing breakfast crowds, canceled mobile orders, shrinking afternoon traffic. It's not a preference shift, it's poverty. The latte effect didn't kill millennials. Millennials are killing the latte because they're broke. When a coffee chain built on indulgence meets an economy built on austerity, only one side survives. It isn't Starbucks. 2. Urban crime is making stores uninsurable. Starbucks has become a frontline casualty of rising disorder. Internal reports describe assaults on staff, drug use in bathrooms, shoplifting, vandalism, armed robberies, encampments blocking entrances, security costs up 280% in some regions. Some stores require private guards, others lock bathrooms entirely. Many receive so many incident reports that insurers classify them as high-risk zones. When your coffee shop needs the same security plan as a bank, you're no longer a cafe, you're a liability, and insurers have begun quietly backing out, forcing Starbucks to close locations that can't be covered, not because they're unprofitable, because they're uninsurable. 3. Labor costs break the unit economics. Starbucks baristas didn't cause the collapse, but they revealed it. With unionization spreading and wages rising, Starbucks was forced to confront a reality it avoided for years. Its entire business model requires low labor costs. When wages go up and foot traffic goes down, the math collapses instantly. A single Starbucks store costs more to staff, more to insure, more to secure, more to operate, but brings in less revenue. The result? Closures. Lots of them. 4. The remote work bomb finally exploded. The The corporate customer, the office worker, was Starbucks' backbone. Morning rush, lunch surge, afternoon slump, caffeine recovery. That rhythm powered thousands of stores. But remote work rewired the country. Those customers never came back. Office towers are half empty. Urban corridors are ghost zones on Mondays and Fridays. Suburban morning rush patterns were permanently disrupted. Starbucks didn't lose a demographic. It lost a routine, the human rhythm its entire business depended on. You cannot rebuild a coffee empire without the workday crowd. 5. The menu inflation backfired. Starbucks tried to offset rising costs with higher prices. That strategy detonated. A grande latte hitting $6.75 isn't just expensive, it's psychological rejection. Customers don't silently absorb sticker shock, they change habits. And once a daily latte becomes an occasional treat, the chain loses its financial engine. Starbucks doesn't survive on occasional treats. It survives on routine. The closures prove the routine is broken. 6. Suburban stores are cracking too. Even in safe, affluent suburbs, foot traffic is down. Drive-through lines are shorter, breakfast sales have cratered, mobile orders are declining, food waste is rising. Starbucks used to be the last luxury people gave up. Now it's the first. That should terrify every economist. When Starbucks becomes unaffordable, everything is unaffordable. It's a consumer warning sign disguised as a coffee trend. 7. The closures no longer hide the truth. Starbucks is not shrinking because demand shifted. It's shrinking because the American lifestyle it depended on has collapsed. It needs busy cities, office crowds, disposable income, stable neighborhoods, predictable routines. It now has hollowed out downtowns, remote workers, inflation-strangled households, unpredictable crime, shrinking consumer power. The closures aren't strategic, they're reactive, a survival instinct, a retreat from a country that no longer matches the Starbucks business model. 8. The collapse of a coffee empire means something bigger. Starbucks wasn't a cafe chain, it was an economic indicator. When Starbucks grows, America's middle class feels confident. When Starbucks retreats, America's middle class is suffocating. And in 2026, Starbucks isn't retreating slowly, it's evacuating entire regions. A quiet, fluorescent lit confirmation that the hidden collapse you've been documenting is no longer hidden at all. 7. Nordstrom and Nordstrom rack luxury retail's final unraveling. Nordstrom was always the elegant exception, the chain that seemed immune to the chaos swallowing the rest of retail. It had prestige, it had loyalty, it had customers who didn't blink at $180 sweaters and $300 shoes. And yet in 2026, even Nordstrom is collapsing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, the way luxury dies when the foundation beneath it erodes. Its closure announcements are wrapped in polished corporate language, portfolio adjustments, market realignment, footprint optimization, but strip away the euphemisms and the truth is brutal. Nordstrom is shutting stores because luxury spending has imploded. Not the ultra wealthy, they're fine. It's the upper middle class that vanished. The consumer group Nordstrom depended on for 100 years is gone. 1. The disappearance of the aspiring luxury shopper. Nordstrom never relied on billionaires. It relied on professionals with stable income, dual income families, aspirational shoppers, upper middle class consumers who still browse the mall, people who bought quality, not excess. That group is now drowning in dear mortgage hikes, insurance spikes, shrinking retirement accounts, credit card debt, childcare costs, basic inflation. The Nordstrom shopper isn't shopping less. They're not shopping at all. Even Nordstrom Rack, once the affordable gateway, is losing its base. When the aspirational class collapses, aspirational retail dies. 2. The mall collapse reaches the high end. Nordstrom's flagship locations in prime malls used to guarantee foot traffic. Now those malls are half vacant, understaffed, increasingly unsafe, struggling with rising crime, losing anchors, losing customers, losing cultural relevance. A luxury department store cannot survive in a dead mall, not even Nordstrom. Closures are now concentrated in California, Washington, Illinois, New York, Arizona, Colorado, the exact states where mall traffic has dropped hardest and disposable income has evaporated. Nordstrom didn't abandon malls. Malls abandoned Nordstrom. 3. The death spiral of discretionary spending. Luxury is discretionary, style is discretionary, beauty is discretionary. Everything Nordstrom sells is discretionary, but discretionary spending in America has cratered. Apparel down, beauty products down, accessories down, footwear down, home decor down. Nordstrom isn't losing customers to competitors, it's losing customers to inflation. When groceries cost 40% more and housing eats half your paycheck, you don't buy designer jeans, you survive. 4. E-commerce didn't save luxury, it killed it faster. Nordstrom's online store is world class, but here's the paradox. Online luxury wipes out physical luxury. Foot traffic plummets, impulse purchases disappear. Store staffing becomes unjustifiable. Inventory costs spike. Return rates explode. Luxury returns are notoriously expensive. Nordstrom Online is strong. Nordstrom stores are dying. This wasn't a digital transition, it was a digital cannibalization. This said cert one true. 5. Shrink and safety destroy the urban flagships. Nordstrom's urban stores, once its crown jewels, are deteriorating fast. Internal reports describe rising theft, repeated security incidents, gangs targeting designer merchandise, employees afraid to close at night, insurers raising premiums or refusing coverage. Some Nordstroms in major cities lose more money to shrink than they earn in profit. When a $400 handbag becomes the easiest item in America to steal, luxury retail cannot function. 6. Nordstrom Rack isn't a lifeboat, it's a warning. Rack stores were supposed to save the company. Instead, they exposed the real crisis. Rack customers now buy clearance, essentials, deeply discounted leftovers. The premium but affordable niche collapsed. Rack now resembles TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington, but with higher overhead and lower margins. It's the worst possible combination. Even the discount version of Nordstrom is becoming too expensive for the economy it serves. 7. The psychology of luxury has changed. Nordstrom once thrived on the idea that dressing well was part of professional life, social life, and aspiration, but the social landscape has shifted. Remote work, casual work culture, declining nightlife, fewer events, fewer social outings, declining dating culture, shrinking middle-class identity. People no longer dress to impress, they dress to endure. Luxury doesn't survive in a culture of endurance. 8. The closures mean something larger than retail. Nordstrom isn't collapsing because it lost relevance. It's collapsing because the America that sustained it no longer exists. A country where the middle class shrinks, the upper middle class dissolves, wealth polarizes, malls die, cities destabilize, crime rises, discretionary income collapses, aspiration evaporates. Nordstrom is a casualty of a deeper fracture. A signal that even the high end of the middle class has finally broken. The unraveling is no longer hypothetical. It's underway. And Nordstrom is the latest proof.